Back in 1999, Sony updated its line of Mavica cameras, this one being the cheapest, the FD73, which shoots to a floppy disk at a maximum resolution of 640 by 480. Is this still usable here at all in 2023? Let's find out.
Many years ago, I bought this camera off of eBay, and I was simply obsessed with old digital cameras. This one coming in what I assume is an Italian-made bag that has definitely seen a lot of use. It just kind of sat around, and I don't remember honestly whether I ever turned it on. Oh, and as you can see, it's got some floppy disks. Not only that, it's also got a Sony L-mount battery with the accompanying charger, and buried underneath is the camera itself. It's the FD73, originally costing $599 in June of 1999. It's a chunky unit, with the reassuring sturdiness that comes with 90s Japanese electronics. To get started, I put in one of the mystery floppies, and with the battery inserted, all you've got to do is flick the lever. Taking a look at the files on here, it's me? And before we take things further, here's a word from today's sponsor Red Magic and their new gaming smartphone, the 8S Pro. If you're after the best of both worlds in terms of design, performance, and functionality, with a strong emphasis on gaming, the new 8S Pro is a serious option to consider. The most notable change with the 8S Pro is the addition of the Platinum variant with a 3D nano etch design, which is simply stunning to look at. And the screen on the other side is equally as impressive. It's 6.8 inches of unobstructed AMOLED with a hidden front-facing camera and a peak brightness of 1300 nits. Inside is the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, kept nice and cool by the upgraded Ice 12 cooling system. The gaming experience is also enhanced by programmable 512Hz shoulder triggers and RGB lighting on the back. To get started, simply flick the red switch to open the Super Base. From here you can customize gaming related settings and fine-tune controls. When in a game, many customizable features and performance settings are easily reached by swiping from the top right. Here you'll also be able to map those shoulder triggers however you'd like. The lightweight, slim design makes it very comfortable for long gaming sessions. The stereo speakers also make for a decent listening experience. The enhanced audio jack is a nice addition if you prefer wired listening. On the back you've got a solid pair of cameras as well, great for both photo and video. It's cutting edge in terms of both RAM and fast storage. It'll easily get you through the day with its large 6000 mAh battery and 65 watt fast charging.
So if you're a smartphone gamer or someone who's after a really solid phone,
check out the link below to find out more about the 8S Pro. Clearly a few years ago, and I genuinely don't even remember trying this camera out. Ah yes, a perfect selfie taken at VGA resolution. While this model does have an impressive 10x optical zoom, it lacks resolution, 640 by 480 or 0.3 megapixels, which even at the time wasn't that impressive.
Released alongside this camera was the far more capable FD88, which I actually made a video on back in 2017. Feel free to give it a watch if you want to see me with much longer hair.
It's a little bit chunkier and has a far more usable 1.3 megapixel resolution. It also does 240p video recording, which, as seen in the old video I made, isn't exactly great.
Probably not a very good video.
But if you could live with a lower resolution and no video recording, the FD73 was well worth the $400 lower price. That low resolution meant you could fit a lot of JPEGs in fine picture mode onto a single floppy disk. I managed a whopping 34. There is also an option to shoot in an uncompressed bitmap file format. However, you can only fit one image per disk, and it takes a considerable amount of time to store that one photo. The features are pretty standard for a 90s point and shoot. You've of course got a flash, a variety of different shooting profiles for different lighting conditions and such. I've personally found the default auto setting pretty good for most scenarios though. And lastly, you can use one of the many picture effects to make the images look even older. Next, you've got to deal with getting the images off of the floppy disk. An easy task if you've got one of these USB floppy drives. However, mine doesn't work anymore or read any disks. Rest in peace, Mr. Floppy. Thankfully, they can still be bought for around $10 online. And since I don't have one lying around, I'll have to dig out a suitable old laptop to import the images. Ideally one with USB as well for easy file transfer. It's still working and running the also nostalgic Windows 98. To see whether you could get away posting an image from this camera on social media, I took a photo of these old speakers, and with my fingers crossed, I put in the disc. Out of curiosity, I tried taking a photo as a bitmap, which also gives you a JPEG as well, and can you tell the difference? The JPEG looks a little more sharpened, but that's about it. Either way, the image is super small. Can we enhance it using some free AI upscaling online? Well, I picked the first 4 supposed free AI image upscalers I saw. Not all of them supporting bitmaps, so I re-exported it as a PNG image. All of them gave you the option to enhance the images up to 4 times, with paid versions offering even more apparently. But how well did all the images fare? There are differences between all the images, and at least one of them looks significantly worse than the rest. Starting out with the original, blown up to fill the screen, notice the texture on the speaker grill. The one from the big JPEG site looks over-sharpened, and the one done through upscale.media loses the speaker grill entirely. The AI chose to completely smoothen it out. I'd say the best two are between the image upscaler and the Pixel Cut site, but I'm giving the edge to this Pixel Cut one. I then uploaded the image to Twitter, asking my audience what song they'd play using these speakers. There only ended up being a single comment that questioned if the image was the work of an AI, surprisingly. But how does the Mavica compare to a modern smartphone? I ventured into the local parkland to find out. Also, big thanks to my mate Jono for filming a few shots. Thankfully, I didn't fall from this random tree fort. And this flower doesn't look particularly good through the lens of the Mavica. The smartphone, on the other hand, has excellent detail. I'm very impressed by the natural depth of field as well. The Mavica, with its limited dynamic range, struggles in harsh lighting conditions. Modern smartphones, however, can take advantage of auto HDR, which captures multiple exposure levels in a single image. Landscape photography benefits from higher resolutions, making small details visible. Complex scenery is a real shortcoming, as you can see here. We really take for granted just how good smartphones have become. I'm genuinely very impressed by the photos straight out of the Red Magic 8S Pro. They're clean and crisp, but the Mavica really has an appealing 90s aesthetic to it. It's really hard to explain. Maybe it's due to the period-accurate Japanese car. So it really can't compete with a modern smartphone in terms of sheer resolution, dynamic range, and color. But how well does it perform against a CF card-based digital camera with the same megapixel count? Yes, this is one of the earliest commercially successful CF card-based digital cameras, the PowerShot 350, released in early 1997 for around $570 US. While floppy disks made for an inexpensive storage medium at the time, CF cards were pretty pricey to say the least, but are still widely used today in professional cameras. The card that this came with is a measly 2 megabytes, and looking on it, apparently I did take some photos around 10 years ago, and I have no idea who that is. I guess the previous owner didn't wipe the card. By the time the FD73 came out, one of these power shots would have been far cheaper than its original $570 US price, making it far cheaper than even the entry-level Mavica. And how well can it photograph this big crane? Not great to say the least, not particularly clear. The Mavica, on the other hand, fares a lot better. It's definitely noticeably sharper with better exposure and far more accurate color reproduction. This round definitely goes to the Mavica. It was not even close. Another ace the Mavica has up its sleeve is the 10x optical zoom, enabling you to get from this to this. Honestly, this is very impressive. The PowerShot has no optical zoom whatsoever, a clear win for the Mavica. And it wouldn't be a trip complete to the city of Adelaide without the Moose Bulls, one of the few tourist attractions in our state. The Mavica does a decent job at judging the exposure, keeping the highlights from blowing out. The PowerShot once again struggles with color and exposure, sadly. So far, this little camera is making the Mavica FD73 look pretty appealing. What doesn't look appealing is this dingy alleyway. Being old cameras, they're going to struggle in low light conditions. Neither image is particularly good, but the Mavica is slightly less bad. It's clear that megapixels aren't everything. Superior optics and processing do go a long way. But these days, using old cameras like this is more about the experience and having fun. Both are obsolete by today's standards. And while on paper the images should look pretty similar, they've both got their own quirks and charm. What better way to make these memories permanent than to print? Oh, sadly these photo kiosks no longer have floppy drives, and for 15 cents a pop we can have them in physical form. I AI upscaled some of the other images, and honestly, when printed out onto 6x4 paper, they look fine. Now that we've got a good amount of photos taken, how about we edit some of the photos using a period-accurate computer and an ancient version of Photoshop? I found the ISO for free on archive.org, then burnt it to a disk. I'm fairly certain this is now classed as abandonware, and installation was quick and easy, although I'll admit editing images was a little bit awkward using the old IBM pointer nub. Here's a new desktop background for all of you to enjoy. Taking photos on this is honestly a whole lot of fun. And while they aren't particularly good quality from an objective standpoint, they do have a really 90s aesthetic. I don't exactly know how to describe it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more stuff like this, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.